Chapter 3, Election and Representation. Introduction. Have you ever played chess? What would happen if the black knight suddenly started moving straight rather than 2.5 squares? Or what would happen if in a game of cricket there were no umpires? In any sport, we need to follow certain rules. Change the rules, and outcome of the game would be very different. Similarly, a game needs an impartial umpire whose decision is accepted by all the players. The rules and the umpire have to be agreed upon before we begin to play a game. What is true of a game is also true of elections. There are different rules or systems of conducting elections. The outcome of the election depends on the rules we have adopted. We need some machinery to conduct the elections in an impartial manner. Since these two decisions need to be taken before the game of electoral politics can begin. This cannot be left to any government. That is why these basic decisions about elections are written down in the constitution of a democratic country. In this chapter, we shall study the constitutional provisions regarding elections and representation. We shall focus on the importance of method of election chosen in our constitution and the implications of constitutional provisions regarding impartial machinery for conducting elections. We shall also look at some suggestions for amending the constitutional provisions in this respect. After reading this chapter, you would understand different methods of election, the characteristics of the system of election adopted in our country, the importance of the provisions for free and fair elections, and the debate on electoral reforms. Elections and democracy. Let us begin by asking ourselves two simple questions about elections and democracy. Can we have democracy without holding elections? Can we hold elections without having democracy? Let us have a discussion in the classroom on both these questions by using examples from whatever we have learnt so far in the previous classes. The first question reminds us of the necessity of representation in a large democracy. All citizens all citizens cannot take direct part in making every decision. Therefore, representatives are elected by the people. This is how elections become important whenever we think of India as a democracy. Our mind invariably turns to the last elections. Elections have today become the most visible symbol of the democratic process. We often distinguish between direct and indirect democracy. A direct democracy is one where the citizens directly participate in the day-to-day decision making and in the running of the government. The ancient city-states in Greece were considered examples of direct democracy. Many would consider local governments, especially Gram Sabhas, to be the closest examples of direct democracy. But this kind of direct democracy cannot be practiced when a decision has to be taken by lakhs and crores of people. That is why rule by the people usually means rule by people's representatives. In such an arrangement, citizens choose their representatives who in turn are actively involved in governing and administering the country. The method followed to choose these representatives is referred to as an election. Thus, the citizens have a limited role in taking major decisions and in running the administration. They are not very actively involved in making of the policies. Citizens are involved indirectly through their elected representatives in this arrangement where all major decisions are taken by elected representatives. The method by which people elect their representatives becomes very important. The second question reminds us the fact that not all elections are democratic. A large number of non-democratic countries also hold elections. In fact, non-democratic rulers are very keen to represent themselves as democratic. They do so by holding election in such a way that it does not threaten their rule. Can you think of some examples of such non-democratic elections? What do you think would distinguish a democratic from a non-democratic election? What can be done to ensure that elections in a country would be conducted in a democratic way? This is where constitution comes in. The constitution of a democratic country lays down some basic rules about elections. The details are usually left to be worked out by laws passed by the legislatures. These basic rules are usually about who is eligible to vote, who is eligible to contest, who is to supervise elections, what do the voters choose? How do the voters choose their representatives? How are the votes to be counted and representatives elected? Like most democratic constitutions, the Constitution of India answers all these questions. As you can see, the first three questions are about ensuring that elections are free and fair and can thus be called democratic. The last two questions are about ensuring a fair representation. In this chapter, you will consider both these aspects of the constitutional provisions about elections. Election system in India, you may have noted above a reference to different methods or the systems of elections. You may have wondered what these were all about. You may have seen or read about different methods of electioneering or campaigning in the elections. What are different methods of elections? There is a system of conducting elections. There are authorities and rules about do's and don'ts. Is that what election system is all about? You may have wondered why the constitution needs to write down the voters are to how the votes are to be counted and representatives elected. Isn't that very obvious? People go and vote. The candidate who gets highest votes gets elected. That is what elections are all over the world. Why do we need to think about it? We need to because this question is not as simple as it appears to us. We have got so used to our system of elections that we think that there cannot be any other way. In a democratic election, people vote and their preference decides who will win the contest, but there can be very different ways in which people make their choices and very different ways in which their preferences can be counted. These different rules of the game can make a difference to who the winner of the game will be. Some rules can favor bigger parties, some rules can help the smaller players, some rules can favor the majority community, others can protect the minority. Let us look at one dramatic instance to see how this happens. First, past the post system, look at the newspaper clippings. It talks of one historic moment in India's democracy. In the Lok Sabha elections of 1984, the Congress party came to power, winning 415 of the 543 Lok Sabha seats, more than 80% of the seats. Such a victory was never achieved by any party in the Lok Sabha. What did this election show? The Congress party won four-fifths of the seats. Does it mean that 4 out of 5 Indian voters voted for the Congress party? Actually, not. Take a look at the enclosed table. The Congress party got 48% of the votes. This means that only 48% of those who voted in the favor of the candidates put up by the Congress party, but the party still managed to win more than 80% of the seats in the Lok Sabha. Look at the performance of other parties. The BJP got 7.4% votes, but less than 1% seats. How did that happen? This happened because in our country we follow a special method of elections Under this system, the entire country is divided into 543 constituencies. Each constituency elects one representative, and the candidate who secures the highest number of votes in that constituency is declared elected. It is important to note that in this system, whoever has more votes than all other candidates is declared elected. The winning candidate need not secure a majority of the votes. This method is called the first past the post FPTP system. In the electoral race, the candidate who is ahead of others who crosses the winning post first of all is the winner. This method is also called the plurality system. This is the method of election prescribed by the constitution. Let us now go back to our example. The Congress party won greater share of seats than its share of votes because in many of the constituencies in which its candidates won, they secured less than 50% of the votes. If there are if there are several candidates, the winning candidate often gets much less than 50% of the votes. The votes that go to the all losing candidates go waste. For those candidates or parties get no seat from those votes. Suppose a party gets only 25% of the votes in every constituency, but everyone else gets even less votes. In that case, the party could win all the seats with only 25% votes or even less. Proportional representation. Let us compare these to how elections take place in Israel that follows a very different system of elections. In Israel, once the votes are counted, each party is allotted the share of seats in the parliament in proportion to its share of votes. Each party fills its quota of seats by picking those many of its nominees from a preference list that has been declared before the elections. This system of elections is called the proportional representation system. In this system, a party gets the same proportion of seats as its proportion of votes. In the proportional representation system, there could be two variations. In some countries like Israel or Netherlands, the entire country is treated as one constituency and seats are allocated to each party according to its share of votes in the national election. The other method is when the country is divided into several multi-member constituencies, as in Argentina and Portugal. Each party prepares a list of candidates for each constituency. Depending on how many have to be elected from that constituency in both these variations, voters exercise their preferences for a party and not a candidate. The seats in a constituency are distributed on the basis of votes polled by a party. Thus, representatives from a constituency would and do belong to different parties in India. We have adopted proportional representation system on a limited scale for indirect elections. The Constitution prescribes a third and complex variation of a proportional representation system for the election of president, vice president, and for the election of Rajya Sabha and Vidhan Parishads. Proportional representation in Israel. Israel follows proportional representation system of elections to the legislature. ये take place every 4 year. ये every party declares the legislature. ये declares a List of its candidates, but voters vote for the party and not for the candidates. A party gets seats in the legislature in proportion to the votes polled by it. This allows even a smaller parties with very small support base to get representation in the legislature. A party must get a minimum of 3.25% votes to be eligible to get seats in the legislature. This often leads to a multi-party coalition government. The following table shows the result of the 2015 elections to the NCERT. Based on this, you can find out what percentage of seats various parties got in that election. Comparison of first past the post and the proportional representation system of election. FPTP, first past the post. The country is divided into small geographical units called constituencies or districts. Large geographical areas are demarcated as constituencies. The entire country may be a single constituency. Every constituency elects one representative. More than one representative may be elected here from one constituency's voter votes for a candidate, voter votes for the party. A party may get more seats than votes in the legislature. Every party gets seats in the legislature in proportion to the percentage of votes that it gets.